In this video, we're going to go over a way that we can solve homework week 2 variables problem, which was a physics acceleration problem, which states average acceleration is defined as the change of velocity divided by the time taken to make the change, as shown in the following formula. Acceleration equals velocity 1 minus velocity 0 divided by time. Write a program that prompts the user to enter the starting velocity v0 in meters per second, the ending velocity v1 in meters per second, and the time span t in seconds, and displays the average acceleration. And they show us a sample run with some sample data that we should get at the end of our program when we enter the sample data. So let's solve this problem. First, let's decide what's our input. Our input will be v1, velocity 1, velocity 0, and our time. Our processing will be to solve this equation, or find the acceleration, and our output will be our acceleration. So let's begin. We'll start in Eclipse, and we'll right-click on our project, and we'll say that we want a new class. And remember to name this class with a capital letter. It's good to follow the Java standard of naming our classes with a capital letter and using something called camel case, where we capitalize every word and get rid of the white space. I'll go ahead and check mark to write public static void main for me and click finish. You don't need this comment in here, so you can get rid of it. You do need some comments at the top with your name and the date and the name of your problem. It's always customary to kind of write this at the top of your program. Let's start by declaring some variables. Now we know our equations will probably have a fractional part, so we decide we want a double variable. We know we're going to have a variable to hold our acceleration, our velocity 1, and our velocity 0. And then last but not least, we need a variable to hold our time. Notice that all of my variables are lowercase and describe what they are holding inside of them. Now we'll go ahead and get our input from the user. We'll ask them to please enter in the velocity 0. Of course, when we want to get input from our user, we are going to have to make an object that has the ability to do this operation for us, of going to the operating system and asking the operating system to give us the variable that was typed in at the keyboard. So you'll have to import that library. You can use the Eclipse Quick Fix by hovering over Scanner and clicking on to import that library. So now it knows what the scanner class is. You can hover over that scanner class and see. And as you become better at programming, you'll start to pay attention to what it's telling you here and what the scanner class can do. And not only can read things from the keyboard, we can use the scanner class to read things from a file. Alright, get rid of our syntax error there. Remember to use your double-click Control-C and Control-V. Use your shortcuts by putting in the dot operator after keyboard. And we want to get what? Which method do we need? Hopefully you remember. You'll start to remember. Since we're going to get in a double, we'll choose the next double method. This method returns a double to us. We're going to place the value of that double inside of one of our variables, and we'll use the assignment operator. Now, since I'm going to do the same thing to get my velocity 1, I can copy and paste this code and then ask the user to enter in velocity 1. Note that I'm not doing any type of error checking in my program. Error checking adds a lot to our programs, and when we're first beginning programming, we don't bother about checking what the user is typing at the keyboard. We assume that the user is always going to type in the right thing. Let's see, we also need our time. And remember to place your time in the correct variable. Alright, now that we have our input, we can do our processing. Our processing is, of course, that equation, which was velocity 0. And if we forget our equation, we can go back and look. It was velocity 1 minus velocity 0, so that way it'll be positive, divided by t, unless of course we're going slower, which would give us negative. So velocity 1 subtracting velocity 0 divided by our time. Note our parentheses, so our order of operations will be correct and do the subtraction before the division. Now that all that is left is to do our output and of course our testing. Alright, we will say the acceleration is, and we'll concatenate onto this string the value of our acceleration double. Alright, now we can test this. So we'll compile our code. Remember, the compiler compiles it to Java bytecode. Now let's see our test variables. Let's see, it was 5.5, 50.9, and 4.5. 5.5, 50.9, and 4.5. And the acceleration is 10.0 and a lot of 8s. And we look back, and yes indeed. Now note that he has his output to 4 decimal places. Let's figure out how we can also get our output to 4 decimal places. We went over the decimal format class in a previous video, but let's review. In order to format your output, you can use an object of type decimal format. He's an object just like our keyboard was an object, and he uses a constructor to instantiate himself. Remember that inside of the parentheses of the constructor, we put how we would like this variable to look, and so we put how many decimal places by placing a string inside of this constructor that uses certain symbols that represent the numbers that we want it to be formatted to. So if we want it to be 4 decimal places, we write in our string something like this. Now hover over the decimal format class and include him. Notice he's from the java.text library. And now we can use this object that we called format to format our acceleration. So just as we use the keyboard object, we put the format object name into the dot operator. It brings up all of the methods he has access to. And one of them is to format a double number. So we format the acceleration. Of course, remember your parenthesis. Now let's test it again. And this time we should see our 4 decimal places. So let's see, it was 5.5, 50.9, and 4.5. And it looks just like his output. Alright, hope this helps.